If you heal me, I'll give you $1,000,000. He repeated the words, sarcasm glinting in his icy blue eyes as he stared at the frail boy standing before him. Jackson's laughter echoed through the marble room like a mocking thunderclap. The boy didn't look away. Barefoot, wearing a time-worn yellowish t-shirt, his trembling hands clutched something that resembled a notebook, or perhaps a journal. The news crew's camera kept rolling. They were there to capture the challenge, or the humiliation, depending on how one looked at it. Jackson Cooper, billionaire, former athlete, and paralyzed from the waist down for the past 6 years after a plane crash, had gone viral when he publicly declared he'd give anything to walk again. But no one had ever managed to make even a finger twitch. Until that day. The boy took a deep breath. His eyes were such a deep brown they looked like they were hiding secrets. He stepped forward, placed his fingers gently against Jackson's temple, and whispered something the microphone couldn't catch. 5 seconds. 10. 20. Then, a shiver. Not from the audience. From him. Jackson's right arm moved. The laughter stopped. The cameraman held his breath, and Jackson, for the first time in years, felt something different inside his body. Life. What? What was that? He whispered, his voice torn between fear and awe. The boy simply replied softly, like someone carrying the weight of a gift he never asked for. Get the check ready. Before we continue, if that gave you chills, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from, because what comes next will leave you speechless. In the next chapters, you'll find out who this boy really is, where he came from, what's inside that notebook, and why the most skeptical man in the country was forced to choose between pride and a miracle. 2 weeks before the scene that broke the internet, Jackson Cooper was living through yet another day of bitter silence. Seated on the glass balcony of his Malibu mansion, he stared out at the ocean, the only movement that still stirred any sensation within him. His lifeless fingers rested on the arms of his motorized wheelchair. Beside him, his nurse typed something into a tablet without saying a word. It was always like that. He breathed, but he wasn't truly living. Wealth, prestige, fame, all of it had become a cruel joke since the accident that left him paralyzed from the neck down. Depression had hollowed out his gaze. Life was reduced to mandatory appointments, useless physical therapy sessions, and forced smiles for the press. But that morning, something caught his attention while watching a video sent by his assistant. "You need to see this, Mr. Cooper," insisted Paul, his personal assistant, pushing the phone toward him. It was a short clip, filmed by a tourist in a small town in rural Georgia. It showed a young black boy, no more than 12 years old, kneeling beside an elderly woman in a wheelchair in the middle of a town square. The boy gently placed his hand on the woman's shoulder and whispered something, as if telling her a story. And then, the woman's hands moved, trembling, clumsy, but alive. She cried. He simply smiled shyly. Jackson let out a dry chuckle. Another cheap trick for clicks. Turn that crap off, Paul. But that night he couldn't sleep. He dreamed of the boy. He dreamed that his own legs were tingling again. He woke up drenched in sweat. In the following days, more videos surfaced. Always with the same boy. No social media, no name. Only the boy from the empty square, as people had started calling him. Annoyed with his own curiosity, Jackson ordered a helicopter to the town where the boy had last been spotted. He told his staff, "Bring me that kid. If he's a fraud, I'll expose him. If he's real, he owes me an explanation." 3 days later, the helicopter landed, and there he was, standing, waiting, as if he already knew they were coming. "What's your name?" asked the helicopter security guard as he opened the door for the boy to climb in. He simply replied, "Zion." No last name, no age, no questions in return. He boarded with the journal pressed tightly against his chest, as if it were a shield. He sat quietly, eyes fixed on the sky through the window as the helicopter lifted off. The pilot glanced at the co-pilot in the rearview mirror and murmured, "That kid, there's something in his eyes. a kind of ancient sorrow. Hours later, Zion landed on the helipad of Jackson Cooper's mansion, surrounded by cameras, onlookers, and media executives. He didn't seem intimidated. He didn't seem to care. Jackson waited for him on the glass balcony, eyes narrowed with suspicion. Their meeting was wordless. No handshake, no welcome. Just two worlds colliding, one destroyed by tragedy and pride, the other carrying a gift he never asked for. "You're the boy from those videos?" Jackson asked coldly. Zion nodded, slowly opening the journal. The diary was worn, its corners creased, its pages marked by fingerprints and filled with scribbles, names, dates, and strange symbols. He pointed to a name written in shaky letters. Clara Mae Johnson, 1956-2023. Jackson furrowed his brow. "That was the woman in the video?" Zion nodded again. He turned 2 more pages. Each page listed a name, a year, a scribbled phrase, and sometimes a small heart drawn beside it. "Could you keep track of everyone you've helped?" Paul asked, intrigued. "Everyone who allowed themselves to be touched." Zion replied, calm but resolute. Jackson scoffed. "This is a collection of parlor tricks, kid. Small-town folks, easily influenced, desperate elders clinging to anything that looks like hope." Zion looked directly at him. For the first time, his eyes seemed to darken. "And you? What would you give to feel something again?" Silence fell like a verdict. Swallowing his pride, Jackson turned his electric wheelchair around and muttered, "Do whatever you want, but I'll warn you, my body is skeptical. So is my soul." Zion stepped forward slowly. He opened the journal to a fresh page, took a pencil and wrote right there, in front of everyone, "Jackson Cooper, 1978, and whispered, "Let's find out together how your story ends." That night, while Zion slept in one of the mansion's guest rooms, the simplest one, by his own choice, Jackson couldn't shut his eyes. Something about that boy stirred his instincts. It wasn't just the journal. It wasn't just the calm gaze. It was as if the boy already knew too much, as if he was one step ahead of everything, as if he had been waiting for him. Driven by suspicion and his habit of controlling everything around him, Jackson summoned Paul to the library. "I want a full dossier on that kid. Real name, parents, school, medical records, everything, by tomorrow morning." Paul nodded. He knew that when Jackson made a demand, the gears started turning fast. Within minutes, private investigators, hackers, and contacts within government databases were mobilized. But what they uncovered over the next few hours sent everyone into a state of unease. Zion didn't exist. No birth certificate, no social security number, no vaccination record, no school, no listed relatives. "It's impossible for someone to just appear out of nowhere," said the identity specialist, scratching his head. "Even a homeless person leaves a trace. This boy is a ghost." Jackson, in disbelief, ordered a cross-reference with missing children cases from the past 15 years. No matches. He had surveillance footage pulled from the town where Zion had last been seen. There, Zion appeared walking alone, helping people, and then vanishing. "He only shows up when someone needs him," the nurse whispered. Jackson hated mysticism, but something inside him trembled, as if he were staring at an equation that couldn't be solved with logic. The next morning, Zion appeared on the balcony with the journal in hand. "You looked into me, didn't you?" Jackson didn't answer, but Zion continued. "There's nothing there. I searched too." "What do you mean you searched?" "I don't remember how I began. I only remember what I feel, and what I write down. People, they're like signals, and I follow the signals." Jackson stood up. His anger had turned into fascination. "You want me to believe you're some kind of vessel of the universe?" Zion replied with chilling calm. "I don't want you to believe. I want you to feel." And for the first time since the accident, Jackson reached out his hand. Trembling, weak, useless, but his own. The wall clock read 6:42 a.m. When Zion touched Jackson Cooper's hand for the very first time, it was a simple gesture. No lights, no music, no dramatics. But inside, something shifted. Jackson felt a faint jolt in his fingers, like a weak electrical current, yet alive. He closed his eyes. He didn't know if it was psychological, if it was just the morning chill, or if his mind was playing tricks on him. But the truth was, he felt it. "Do it again," he said, his voice hoarse. Zion gently touched his fingers once more, this time with his other hand resting over the open journal. This time the tingling was stronger. It climbed up to his forearm. Jackson's eyes widened. "Paul, get someone, I think I can feel my arm." The medical team rushed in. Tests were run. Reflexes, stimuli, sensors. No concrete scientific findings. No clinical explanation. But Jackson knew what was happening, even if no one could measure it. He was coming back. The room sat in stunned silence for several minutes, until Jackson looked at Zion with a depth of seriousness he hadn't shown in years. "What do you want in return for this?" Without hesitation, Zion answered, "Nothing." Jackson chuckled in disbelief. "Everyone wants something. Money, fame, security. What do you want? To be under my wing? A life of luxury?" Zion lowered his eyes. "I want you to start living again. Truly living." That hit Jackson like a punch to the chest. It wasn't about walking. It was about feeling again, about being human, about not dying while still breathing. "Why me, Zion? Why help me?" The boy answered while gazing toward the horizon. "Because there's a lot inside you that no one sees, and sometimes, even the hardest souls deserve a second chance." That night, Jackson asked for complete privacy. He stayed in his room, alone, staring at the hand that now tingled. For the first time, he didn't want to escape the pain. He wanted to understand it. Meanwhile, Zion lay in bed, writing in his journal. Jackson Cooper, 1978, under reconstruction. Jackson's mansion was silent at night, but inside him, the noise was deafening. The tingling in his arm persisted, and with it came memories, ones he had buried in cement and shame, beginning to rise again, like ghosts tapping at a locked door. He locked himself in his study, opened a drawer that hadn't been touched in years, and pulled out an old photograph. A younger version of himself standing beside a red-headed boy with a bright smile, and a woman with soft eyes and a gentle expression. Peter, his younger brother. Margaret, the mother he had never been able to forgive. Jackson ran his fingers over the photo and, for the first time in years, cried. Zion didn't show up that night. He stayed in his room, as if he knew Jackson needed to face this moment alone. Years before the accident, Jackson had been a rising star, a promising football player, arrogant, impulsive, and adored by the media. Peter, on the other hand, was the complete opposite, gentle, sensitive, and in love with music. And that was precisely why their father rejected him. Jackson never defended his brother. On the contrary, he pushed him further away, desperate to win his father's approval. Until the day of the accident. Peter died in a fire that started in his bedroom. The cause? A faulty space heater that Jackson had promised to fix, but forgot, or ignored, or simply didn't care enough to handle. Their mother never looked him in the eyes again after that day. And Jackson, he fell apart from the inside. The athlete died long before his body ever stopped moving. The next morning, Zion entered the library. "Do you remember the day you stopped feeling?" he asked bluntly. Jackson hesitated, then nodded. It was at Peter's funeral. Zion stepped closer and handed him the journal. "Then let's write about it. Use the hand that came back to life, even if just a little." Jackson grasped the pencil with effort, but he wrote, "Forgive me, Peter. I loved you. I just didn't know how to show it." A tear fell onto the paper, and in that moment, the fingers of his other hand moved. The video went viral in less than an hour. On a widely watched podcast, businessman and investor Gregory Hale, Jackson's long-standing rival for over a decade, exposed what he claimed was a mystical fraud involving the boy named Zion. "It's all staged," Gregory said, a venomous grin spreading across his face. "The billionaire who lost everything is desperate for relevance. And now this boy shows up, no last name, no record, claiming he can make people walk with a touch. It's a scam." The host, leaning into the controversy, pushed further. "But what about the videos, Gregory? There are recordings, testimonials, even a slight motor improvement already observed by Jackson's doctors." Gregory shrugged. "Suggestion, placebo, emotional manipulation, or editing. Someone's cashing in on this story. I wouldn't be surprised if a documentary, a book, or even a cult pops up next." Social media exploded. Comments quickly divided, some fiercely skeptical, others claiming they had encountered Zion in different towns years earlier and had been helped in unexplainable ways. Back at the mansion, Jackson watched it all in silence. Zion sat beside him, simply observing. "You're going to want me to leave now, aren't you?" he asked, calm as ever. Jackson took a deep breath. "Back then, I would have cared more about what they think than about what's real. But now, I saw it. I felt it. And no one can take that away from me." Zion lowered his head, moved. But Gregory wasn't finished. The following afternoon, he filed a formal legal petition requesting an official investigation into Zion's identity. He accused Jackson of exploiting a minor for image rehabilitation and promoting deceptive healing practices. That evening, the police knocked on the mansion's door. Zion was taken in for questioning. In the interrogation room, Zion sat alone. No lawyer, no guardian, just the journal resting on his lap. "What's your full name?" the social worker asked. "Zion." "Last name?" "Never had one." "Your mother's name?" "Never met her." The woman looked at him with quiet sorrow, and then, her voice trembling, she asked, "Do you know why you're here?" Zion opened the journal. He turned it toward her, revealing a page with Jackson's name, the date of the accident, and beneath it, in small handwritten letters, "Rebirth hurts, but it's worth it." He looked up and answered, "I'm here because sometimes the world needs to be reminded that the invisible can still carry power." The courtroom was packed. Journalists, cameras, onlookers. Everyone wanted a front row seat to what was being called the final spectacle. On one side, Gregory Hale and his team of attorneys. On the other, a frail boy clutching a journal, and beside him, Jackson Cooper, still in his wheelchair. But his gaze was different now. Steady. Present. The judge entered. The murmurs ceased. Camera flashes dimmed. "We are here to assess allegations of fraud, manipulation, and the unlawful exposure of a minor. Mr. Cooper, would you like to make a statement?" the judge asked. Jackson cleared his throat. The entire room went still. "Your Honor, I was a hollow man for a very long time. Arrogant, cold. I believed in nothing but power and control." His voice wavered but didn't break. "But this boy gave me back something I didn't even know was still in me. Hope." Gregory let out a mocking laugh. "With all due respect, Your Honor, this has turned into a self-help seminar. The facts are simple. This child doesn't exist in any official record. He's a liability. He could be anything. An actor, a manipulator, a fraud." The judge turned to Zion. "Son, is there anything you'd like to say?" Zion stood silent for a few seconds, then walked to the center of the room. He took the journal from his chest and placed it on the bench. "I'm not a miracle. I'm not magic. I just listen. I listen to pain. And where there's pain, sometimes, there's a crack where light gets in." The words lingered in the air. Some in the courtroom began to cry. Others looked down, ashamed. Then Jackson gripped the arms of his wheelchair and tried to stand. People held their breath, a tremble in his knee, a strain in his hip. His body, hesitant, gravity, daring him to fail. But he rose, slowly, unsteady, shaking, but on his feet. Gregory shot to his feet, stunned. "This is impossible. He's faking it. This is all staged." The judge, clearly moved, called for order, but the courtroom had already changed. People wept, cameras rolled, the world watched, in real time, a man who had lost everything begin to reclaim himself. Jackson turned to Gregory and said, "You may have the paperwork, but I have the truth." At the end of the hearing, the judge suspended the investigation, requesting a psychological evaluation of Zion, but denied the request to have him removed from Jackson's custody. He concluded, "If there's anything wrong here, it's the world's inability to deal with what it doesn't understand." In the days following the hearing, Zion became a global headline. The boy who made the billionaire walk. Phenomenon or fraud? Meet Zion, the boy with no past. The scientists divided over Jackson Cooper's recovery. News outlets speculated. Doctors evaded questions. Influencers hunted for interviews. But Zion remained the same. Quiet, discreet, journal under his arm, wearing the same faded t-shirt. Jackson, now undergoing intensive physical therapy, began walking with the help of bars and crutches. But more remarkable than his physical progress was what was happening inside him. For the first time in his life, he was allowing himself to be human. "I used to think that pain was weakness," he said in an interview, with Zion silently sitting beside him. "Now I understand. Pain means I'm alive." While the world kept asking who Zion really was, he continued to write. The journal, now nearly full, contained unfamiliar names, future dates, and phrases no one could decipher, though in time, they would make perfect sense. Jackson sensed something was shifting in Zion. "You're leaving, aren't you?" he asked one late afternoon. Zion looked toward the horizon, where the sky was beginning to turn orange. "My part here is almost done, but I still need you." "No, you don't. You just don't believe that yet." "Why me? Why did you come to me?" Zion took a deep breath. The answer seemed to weigh heavy on him. "Because someone had to show you that not every ending is a fall. Sometimes, it's just life saying, it's time to begin again." Jackson couldn't hold back the tears. Zion stood, hugged him tightly and whispered, "Thank you for letting me be part of your healing. Now, you're going to be part of someone else's." The next morning, Zion was gone. No footprints, no signs of escape, no security footage, nothing. The room was untouched, except for the journal, left neatly on the bed with one final handwritten page. "When you finally believe you can walk on your own, I'll already be somewhere else, doing the same for someone who doesn't know they can yet." 1 year later, the Rehabilitation Center, Zion House, opened quietly, no press conferences, no grand ceremony. It was a modern yet welcoming structure, light-colored walls, open gardens, wide hallways filled with natural light. In the entrance hall, a discreet plaque read, "For all those who once doubted themselves, you still can." Jackson walked slowly, but unaided. Each step was still a reminder of everything he had lived through and lost, before learning how to rise again. He was no longer the billionaire in the headlines, just a man at peace who had chosen to use what remained of his fortune to offer something few ever do: a second chance. The center provided free care to people recovering from accidents, physical and emotional trauma, substance abuse, and severe depression. But more than healing bodies, Jackson's mission was to reach souls. In the main auditorium, there was a bookshelf lined with identical journals, just like the one Zion used to carry. Jackson called them Restart Diaries. Each patient received one upon arrival. On the first page, a simple phrase was printed: "It doesn't matter where you stopped. Start from here." One afternoon, as Jackson strolled through the garden, he noticed a young girl sitting alone, crying. She held her journal tightly, hands smudged with paint, her face etched with frustration. He sat beside her, said nothing at first, just stayed there. After a while, she whispered, "I don't know what to write." Jackson smiled. "Start with what you still feel, even if it's anger, even if it's fear." She looked at him unsure. "Will it help?" He pulled his own journal from his pocket. It was worn, creased, still open to the same page he had written 1 year earlier. "Forgive me, Peter. I loved you. I just didn't know how to show it." His voice caught as he said, "Sometimes writing it down is the first step to saying it out loud." The girl took a deep breath, and for the first time, scribbled, "Today I'm scared, but I'm trying." Jackson nodded. "That's a great start." That night, back at home, Jackson looked up at the sky, the stars clearer than ever. He thought of Zion, of his calm voice, of the journal he had purposely left behind, of the last sentence written, "When you finally believe you can walk on your own, I'll already be somewhere else." And Jackson smiled, because now he understood. Zion wasn't the miracle. He was the reminder that we all carry one, inside us. We just have to believe and keep going. If this story touched you in any way, share in the comments which moment moved you most. Have you ever lived through something that made you start over? Like this video so more people can discover the journey of Jackson and Zion. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that it's not too late. And subscribe to the channel for more real, emotional, and transformative stories. Because sometimes, healing doesn't come from what we see, but from what we believe. And you? Have you started writing your next page?